Hello, I've got another 3D printed model here that I finished with some acrylic paints and clump foliage and static grass. The model is called Castle Gate and it's by Kijai. Anyway, I've got a link to the free to download STL in the link below. Um, and there's also a link to another video I made where I kind of detail all of the materials and tools that I use to finish models so I don't have to repeat myself over and over about that. Um, so anyway, I guess I'll get to the model. This is one of my favorite models that I've ever done. It's also one of the first models that I've done, and I've done about 2 dozen by now. And the reason why I like it so much is there's just so many fine details, and I really love the foundation that it has that allows you to customize with things like model grass and foliage. I actually call this one Gorse Castle because I used the yellow flower bits to kind of create gorse bushes everywhere. Those are really common in Scotland, and you see them quite often growing out of rocky surfaces, and it just reminded me of that kind of setup. So yes, I call it Gorse Castle. Anyway, um, to start off any of my 3D printed models, the first thing I do is I always clean them up. Obviously, coming off the print bed, there's usually a bit of plastic stuck to the bottom, and possibly any little baubles and things. So I snip those off. I file down any bits that need to be filed down. However, sometimes, like with these, you can see some of the layers. Maybe not so much in this video. Oh, there. No, it's not really focusing. But anyway, there's some rough bits where you can actually see the layers like on the houses, but I thought that was actually quite good because to me it looks a bit like wood, and sometimes these things can be happy accidents as well. So after you're done cleaning up the model for painting, you must always prime your models. The reason why the primer layer is essential is because paint won't just stick to smooth plastic. Well, it'll appear to stick, but flaking is very likely. And if you put a bunch of time into painting your model, you really don't want it to flake off. So I always prime with a brush. I just brush on a layer of usually gray. In this case, it was gray. Gray acrylic paint over the whole thing and just cover it and let it dry for a day. Plenty of people tend to use spray primers, and that's fine too. It's just my personal preference to brush it on. In brushing it on, I also find that I find all these little details, and I kind of can go over in my head how I'd like to paint them going forward. So it's kind of like getting to know the model by doing it with a brush, but that's just my little kind of thing, and you can do it any way you want. So after you're done priming and it's thoroughly dry, that's for me a day. Definitely don't want it to show any indication of not being properly dried, because then you can lose huge chunks of paints and it's terrible. Then you just kind of block in your colors. For me, because I primed this in grey, blocking in colors wasn't too difficult with this stone bit that I wanted to leave grey and this castle bit that I wanted to leave grey. The houses I chose to make brown, and the roofs I actually painted, you can't really tell on camera, but the roofs are actually painted in like a dark purple, and I highlighted the copper on, but of course when the light hits it, all you can see is the copper. Excuse me. So, yeah. And after that was all dry, I went in and I did the washes, and the washes were dark brown instead of black, and I did that all over the castle. I did it all over the stones. I did it all through the houses, and I did this in a few layers because I really wanted to bring out specific details. There aren't any bricks on this castle, but the layer lines kind of give you a bit of texture for the paint to hold on to. Um, and like places like right in here and the little alcoves and things, I applied extra dark washes to bring out those shadows so that you can really, really see it even from across the room, that these places are shadowed. Anywho, after the washes were dried, I applied the dry brush, and with the dry brush, I highlighted, went back through and highlighted with a lighter gray the bits that I wanted to kind of brighten up. I dry brushed this copper into the rooftops, and I kind of used a lighter gray to highlight some stone bits to bring out the ridges. Once that layer was all dry, I went in with the fine details. I probably did even more layers of shadowing in here, and I made all the windows bright. They're all lit up. I guess nobody's home in the castle because I did those black. Um, and the stairs I kind of washed a little bit more, and I highlighted the ridges on the stairs just to make sure that they really stood out and they didn't get lost. Oh, I apologize for my light. It's not the greatest setup in here. Anyway, so now the whole model's painted, and I was looking at it, and it looked good. I was happy with it, but I mean, look at all of these beautiful surfaces. They're just begging to be covered in plant life and things. So I got out my static grass and some actual nail flocking powder. I laid down the nail flocking powder first because it's very fine. My static grass is all 2mm static grass. I'm looking into getting some different sizes and colors, but my supply is fairly limited at the moment. So first I glued on all of the fluff in a couple of layers using just white school glue. It's PVA, just, you know, you can get it just about anywhere. And once that was all dried and looking pretty good, I decided to glue in some green clump foliage. And I did that in tiny pieces because the larger pieces just didn't look right. So I broke it up into really tiny pieces, and I applied that using glue and tweezers. And then after that, I thought, well, the green's quite dark, and it was kind of, I don't know, it was disappearing into the castle a bit. And I thought, well, what if I try and put on some flowers? I've got like loads of yellow clump foliage, but of course each yellow flower had to be broken up and individually glued on, but I think it was worth it in the end. I even made like vines going up here, and you know, there's little bushes and in various places. It's just growing anywhere it can cling onto the stone, and that's really it for this model. The last thing I want to point out that like I really, really like about this model is that it's got a tunnel, and the tunnel runs under the castle. Can you see that? It's sticking out the hole. I just think that's the coolest thing. Anyway, you'll find that with this designer, he puts in a lot of cool little details like that that you don't necessarily see when you're looking at the picture on Thingiverse or My Mini Factory or wherever you've downloaded it from. But once it's printed, you're like, oh my god, he's just, look at that. That's just fantastic. It's totally unnecessary, but just completely cool when you're looking at it. Anyway, also these stairs go all the way down. That's cool too. Anywho, yep, that's it. That's it for the model. Love this model. It's great potential, so many cool details, and that's it for me. Bye.